listener production.
Hi, Natarsha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, we unpack the breakdown of the bromance between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. After leaving the White House, the billionaire tech entrepreneur has now lashed out at the US administration on social media. So what went wrong, and did the US president play one of the most influential businessmen in the world? That chat coming up. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Wednesday, the 4th of June. The housemate of missing teenager Phoebe Bishop has been taken into custody over her disappearance. The 17-year-old vanished almost 3 weeks ago near Bundaberg on her way to the airport. At the time of this recording, police have confirmed 34-year-old James Wood is now assisting with their inquiries. No charges have been laid. Many leading economists are predicting another cut in interest rates after lower than expected GDP figures. The gross domestic product increased by just 0.2% in the March quarter, with low consumer spending and the effects of Cyclone Alfred key contributing factors. The economy is now falling back into a so-called per capita recession, with calls growing for an immediate cash rate cut from the RBA when it meets next month. Here is the Federal Treasurer, Jim Chalmers.
There wasn't a lot of growth in March, but what growth there was private sector led, and that's an encouraging sign. With all of the uncertainty in the world, any growth is a decent outcome, even modest growth.
Oreo is suing Aldi in the US for copycat packaging. The US law firm is accusing the supermarket giant of blatantly copying its famous packaging, saying Aldi is using it to, quote, deceive consumers and ride the coattails of the company's attraction, fame and prestige. And bingo, the winner of last night's $70 million Oz Lotto has finally been found. It was initially believed the winner was from Victoria, but the lot says it was given the wrong contact details and the real winner is from Tasmania. The man says he's had a tough couple of years and now plans to retire early and buy a house with his partner, adding after winning $70 million, he doesn't have to work anymore and may go and hand his resignation in now. Now it's time to get into our deep dive over the breakdown of one of the most powerful relationships in the world. It was a bromance between a tech billionaire and the businessman turned US president. Elon Musk spent millions backing Donald Trump for the 2024 US election, and the reward, it seems, was a powerful position in the White House.
A star is born, Elon. But he's a character, he's a special guy, he's a super genius. We have to protect our geniuses. We don't have that many of them.
President Trump must win to preserve the Constitution. He must win to preserve democracy in America.
I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. DOGE. Perhaps you've heard of it.
But 6 months on, US efficiency boss Elon Musk is gone and has broken his silence, lashing out at the US administration, labelling the government's, quote, massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill as a disgusting abomination. We chat with political expert Dr. Henry Maher from the University of Sydney, who says Elon Musk was played by Donald Trump with dire consequences for US democracy. Henry, thanks so much for joining us. Take us through how this bromance between Donald Trump and a very wealthy billionaire businessman, Elon Musk, first started.
Well, if we track back about 4 years, Elon Musk, by his own account, voted for left-wing politicians. He voted for Joe Biden back in 2020, for Hillary Clinton before that. Some point in the 4 years of the Biden presidency, his politics starts to move on a much harder trajectory towards the right, whether it's to do with the amount of time he spent online, like a lot of people became radicalized, whether it was to do with opposition to the Biden administration, the COVID experience. There was a number of reasons that his politics very slowly but steadily over those 4 years moved towards Trumpism, moved towards the MAGA movement. Even early 2024, it wasn't quite clear who he was going to endorse, who he would support. But then over the course of the election campaign, he comes out very hard for Trump. He ends up donating close to $300 million of his own money to help get Trump elected. He campaigns with him around the country.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elon Musk.
Yes! This is what victory feels like. And this was no ordinary victory. This was a fork in the road of human civilization.
And it seems that in return, Trump gives him all sorts of access to the White House, wants to take him on board to run the Doge campaign and so on. So across the course of that campaign, it just seemed they got closer personally, their families got closer, and hence you had the kind of, at least a deliberately projected bromance that the two of them would be working together to fix government.
Henry, you mentioned there, of course, Elon Musk was given this very influential position within the White House to be the chief of what he called an efficiency organisation. Do you think he was actually hands-on in trying to work out where they could cut costs?
I think he believed that he would be able to do it, and so he very much threw himself into the role. I think possibly with the naivety of someone who didn't quite understand how government works, that is used to the private sector where, your word as the CEO is much easier to implement. In government, there's so many competing stakeholders, competing groups, competing demographics. And so he threw himself into this role, but he found that government works very differently. It originally claimed that he was going to save $2 trillion in government spending. That dropped to $1 trillion. Last we heard his target was $150 billion, which, is ending up looking like maybe he's saved $30 billion. So he learned that the rules of government work very differently to the private sector.
Do you always think this was a key strategy by Elon Musk to say, okay, I'm literally going to financially back Donald Trump to get into the White House, and that will open a door for me to get access to information and data that I would never be able to get my hands on?
I think there's two ways to read this, and there's plausible evidence for both. One theory is that he genuinely was ideologically invested in Trumpism and the MAGA movement. Even the amount of time he spends on his X platform tweeting views about everything from white genocide in South Africa to trans rights debates, he seems to be very ideologically invested in the Trump movement. So there is a reading that he was, this is his genuinely held belief. There's a second reading that, this was about access to power, that he wanted the office in the White House, that he wanted to change government, that the early evidence was he thought it would help his company. Tesla share price in the short term almost doubled because investors thought the access he would have to government would help his commercial interests. So, without being in his head, it's hard to say exactly how much was ideological and how much was transactional. On the other hand, for Trump, though, I think it was always very clearly transactional, and it seems like so many other people, Trump has played him and has got what he wanted.
So do you think that happened? Do you think Mr. Trump knew exactly how he was going to play Elon Musk? And it looks like that he said, "You're fired, Elon Musk. You're out of the White House."
I think essentially, yeah. I think Trump knew that the original spending cuts of Doge would be unpopular, and he was very happy to have Musk take all the kind of public fire for that. Musk has essentially trashed his public reputation in the past 12 months. And so Trump has kind of used him as a shield. He's attracted a lot of the negative attention of the chaos of the early Trump administration. And as early as March, there was evidence that Trump was kind of clipping his wings and cutting back his role.
I don't need Elon for anything other than I happen to like him.
And now it seems like, he's completely maneuvered him out. He said he'll still have access, but it remains to be seen what exactly that means.
Henry, in regards to certainly Elon Musk publicly, he has inferred that the bromance is over, and he's certainly not happy with how he either resigned from his post in the White House or he was pushed out. He's actually gone on his own social media platform, X, formerly known as Twitter, and this is what Mr. Musk has said, quote, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." What are your thoughts on that statement? It's pretty blatant.
It's quite a strong break, isn't it? And Trump's not the kind of person who takes an insult without firing back. So for now, Trump has been somewhat muted in his response, but we'll see if he fires back.
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
I think the outburst is evidence that Elon kind of knows that he's been played. that the logic that the government originally set up was that Musk was going to cut $2 billion from government spending, and they would use that for a $2 billion tax cut. And so the deficit wouldn't go up. As I said, he didn't save anywhere near, $2 trillion. These numbers are so large. He didn't save anything near $2 trillion as he claimed. It ended up being something like $30 billion maybe. And now Trump is still going ahead, not just with $2 trillion, but a $3 trillion tax cut.
Disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing. I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
So I think Musk is now feeling very much like he's been played by Trump. He's aware of that, and that's what this outburst is.
Henry, he is, you may argue that he has been played. Mr. Musk is still a very influential billionaire who has a pretty powerful social media platform and also, one may argue, access to a lot of information and data because that is the way of the future. Do you think he will fire back in a very firm way against the US president?
I think if Musk's advisors are speaking in his ear, they'll be telling him he can't afford to alienate the remaining market share that he needs to access. And that, we've seen Tesla share price after that peak, that it did start to come down because sales were crashing. He obviously alienated a lot of people with his politics. If he now turns on the MAGA movement as well and ends up in a kind of incendiary war of words with Trump, then, he loses the remaining part of the population that view him positively. So I think for both actors, they will want to not have a major blow up. I think they're aware of the relationship ending. They'll want to manage it. And that's the press conference we had in the White House recently. It was very much trying to project that, there was still friendship and there was still connections.
Today it's about a man named Elon, and he's one of the greatest business leaders and innovators the world has ever produced. He stepped forward to put his very great talents into the service of our nation, and we appreciate it.
That said, we know what Trump's ego is like, and so we'll see if he can't resist the urge to return fire in the next couple of days.
What precedent do you think this sets, Henry, in regards to having someone like a very influential billionaire in a very influential position within the White House, as I said earlier, with access to top secret information and a key decision maker at the table? Is that a concerning precedent?
I think we can't underestimate just how unprecedented this is. The level of transactional politics in the current White House that really is pay for access. From Musk, one prominent example, Qatar donating a new aeroplane that's going to serve as Air Force One is another similar example that's played out over the last couple of weeks or so. The standards of proprietary expected of politicians, of conflict of interest declarations, seems to have gone out the window in an unprecedented way. Of course, politicians have always taken favours. People with money and power have always had access to the top table. But there's certainly a blatantness to Trumpism in his second term that it very much a kind of emperor has no clothes moment, that there's no even pretense anymore, that money doesn't get you power, that strength won't be rewarded with power and access to the government.
Do you think this changes the new platform for politics in the future, not only in the US, but right around the world?
Well, in the US, I think so. I think they're entering a very much new political era. The rest of the world, I'm not so sure, because we've seen around the rest of the world in the last couple of major elections in Western countries a very explicit rejection of Trumpism. Here in Australia, as I'm sure you know, a lot of the aftermath of the election focused on Dutton being too close to Trump and being punished as a result of that. Similar in Canada, where the Conservative Party leader lost his own seat as well. So in other countries, I don't quite see this level of open corruption, open curtailing to money and power kind of cutting through. I think other democracies like Australia are more robust. I don't think we would stand for this. As for the United States, it seems to be so heavily polarized that, as long as you're on the side of Trump, you can get away with this.
We'll wait and see what unfolds. It certainly will be an interesting few years ahead. Henry, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks.
That was Professor Henry Maher from the University of Sydney. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. I'm Natarsha Belling. Thanks for your company.